Hi guys, this is Retro Nerd Girl. Of course, you know it's me. I don't know why I'm saying that, but hey, so glad to be able to do this review for you. Let's see if I could pull up the slide here. For my first time watching When Worlds Collide. Yes, I finally watched this movie. I know everybody's been telling me, "Oh, you've got to watch it. You've got to watch it. It's really good." And guess what? They were right. Always, always right, always right. It's definitely amazing. Loved all these hints at the biblical tale of Noah's Ark, which is a great story. It is fantastic the way it's worked in. They did sort of give you the obvious thing in the very beginning of the movie. They open it up with the Holy Bible. They did go through a few passages or a few words from the Noah's Ark story, which I thought was very unique, and maybe it hit you over the head just a little bit. It wasn't something that you could come up with on your own, because that would have been also very clever to have us do that. But it did a fantastic job of doing just that. I appreciated it very much, because I do enjoy the story of Noah's Ark quite much when it was first told to me as a kid. And let's see, I have some notes that I'm going to refer to over here. So, yes, I love the opening credits, guys. The music is incredible. It's incredible. It's wonderful. And the music is by Leith Stevens. It has this grandness about it, but also it is like something epic is about to happen. I just do love it. This film reminded me of Interstellar, where you have humans going to another world to kind of set up shop and not really knowing what they're in for. Who knows what happens at the end of this movie, which I wouldn't have mind learning more about that. But this is truly spectacular. All of the special effects that were done in this film, that really was ahead of its time. Way, way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time. So let me just pull out some basics about When Worlds Collide. When Worlds Collide is a 1951 American science fiction disaster film released by Paramount Pictures. It was produced by George Pal, which we know from all of his wonderful work, directed by Rudolph Mattei, and stars Richard Gere, Barbara Rush, Peter Hansen, John Hoyt, and the film is based on the 1933 science fiction novel of the same name, co-written by Edwin Ballmer and Philip Wiley. The film's storyline concerns the coming destruction of Earth by a rogue star called Belus, and the desperate efforts to build a space ark to transport a group of men and women to Belus's single planet, Zyra, which is also on the way close to passing Earth. The film starts with South African astronomer. He is the first to notice that there's something going on out there in space, and he is ready to pass on his findings to Dr. Cole Hedren in the United States. Hedren, with the assistance of his daughter Joyce, confirms their worst fears. So, the person who is going to deliver this message is actually a scoundrel of a womanizing. We would say that he plays the field quite a bit, and his name in the story is David Randall. And David Randall is quite an interesting character. You immediately like him immediately. He does play sort of a playboy, but he's sort of curious as to what's going on, the intense secrecy behind this case that he has to bring to Dr. Hedren. And like, hey, this is much bigger than just getting paid for another gig. This is life and death for the entire planet he's discovering. And so I love the change on his face from like this really suave kind of playboy, fast talking BSer, and now he is definitely like more serious, more intense about like just finding out that the end of the world is happening. His entire personality changes. He's more concerned now. He's starting to think of others just a little bit, you know. So he's not that as selfish as you may think he is in the beginning. There's immediately some sparks flying around between himself and Dr. Hedren's daughter. And I thought it was really cute how he kind of likes her, but he's staying distant because she does have a boyfriend who they're in pretty much almost either engaged or about to be engaged. She is being played by Barbara Rush, and her name is Joyce Hedren. Yes, she plays the part very mature for her age, and she's well aware of all the scientific studies that her father has made. She is definitely a class act in the story, and I do love the way she was being portrayed by Barbara Rush. She did an excellent job. I thought definitely want to see all of her movies now. This is Peter Hansen, who is playing the part of Dr. Tony Drake. This is the love interest of Joyce Hendren, and he is slowly watching his girlfriend steer away from him, becoming more cold, and suddenly now showing more and more affection to Dave Randall. And this is really causing a wedge between the three characters. And there's personal conflict here. You could say that maybe the story didn't need that, but I do feel like it adds another layer on top of everything else that's going on. These three characters do develop beautifully in the story, and it's so well done. By the end, you do feel like this is a satisfying ending for these characters and how they grow and change. You know, in the beginning of the story, Tony is really being treated poorly. He's in love with a woman one minute, and then the next minute she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Well, Tony is a good guy. He's actually a good guy. He's not played for like, oh, you know, that happened, so I'm going to get back at you and be immature and silly. He's a doctor, for heaven's sake. And so, being a doctor, he really is out to help people, really is doing his best to be a model citizen, actually living by the truth of doing good and good deeds in the world. So, I absolutely love that. It just was about like, hey, we've got this situation that's tricky, and then we've got good people. Probably the way you would love to see how most people deal with their arguments and stuff. And now, at some point, it does get to be a little physical. They were like about to go to blows with each other, but of course, finding out that people were in trouble. They had a lot in common because they, of course, immediately go out there, think very little of themselves, and go to help people. And that is admirable. Love that they inserted characters like this in the story. And, you know, here she is, Joyce, and is taking a side eye at uh, Dave here. And instead of spending, you know, she's already straying from her relationship with Tony, which is sad because it at first it seemed like they were really getting along really well, but there is something special about Dave that she cannot help. And although I don't approve of someone, you know, changing their mind right in the middle of a relationship like this, but these things do happen, right? So yes, this is a scene that I especially love because Dave Randall has been paid a whole bunch of money for doing that one gig, but upon learning that the end of the world is happening, money doesn't really mean a whole lot. So there he is, like burning money because he doesn't think it's worthy anymore, which is a great metaphor in a way. And then Dr. Hedren tries to warn the world about the end of the world. And of course, they don't believe him. they're they are trying to find every reason to not take the proper course to try to figure out a way to save themselves, basically. It has been met with many, many articles in newspapers admonishing him and making him look stupid and destroying his credibility. And so, yes, he doesn't get very far with the United Nations in this story. It's really quite sad to see how, even in light of many problems that we've had in history, this is the same thing that would happen today. And now I believe it after, experiencing what we did during COVID. And even now, we like, in order to get everybody on the same page is really, really difficult. It's very difficult, especially when it comes to science. Science is one of those things where people, it is not just enough to have studies to prove something, or what you would call scientific fact to prove something, until it actually happens, and to actually experience it. And so for many of these people, they flat out did not believe that the end of the world was going to happen. So they did nothing. But a few benefactors came through and said, "Hey, look, we're going to give you money to run this program." And basically, the program was to find a location to build a sort of like a camp, and in that camp, creating a spaceship and a ramp to send that spaceship into outer space. Very, very interesting. This reminds me of things to come, where they thought the way to get to outer space is through a gun, something that can just propel a ship into outer space, instead of using, rocket boosters and having enough fuel and power from those rockets to send you into space. So that was the thing that people were fooling around with. How do you get into outer space? And so I love that this film documents sort of the early ideas of how people thought space travel would go. Before we go, let's talk about this character, because he is very significant in the story. The man in the wheelchair, he is Sidney Stanton, and he is a rich millionaire who wants to be able to control what happens on this mission. And Dr. Cole Hendren says, "Hey, look, we're not going by your rules, okay? If you want safe passage to the new world, you've got it. Well, your life for your millions, basically, what he said." And so they did do it. He said, "Okay, well, that's the exchange. I'll give you all my money to get started on building this rocket ship." And I thought it was very interesting how we set up that this character is curmudgeony, he's bitter, and he's very much he does not like human beings. And he wants to be able to control, to say who gets to be on this trip or not. And that's the biggest argument in this storyline that he's involved in. Really nice job. So that was marvelous. I really love the development of this character, how they set things up in the beginning and then they paid things off at the end with this character. Wonderful job. Here we have Dr. Hedren talking to Joyce, her asking him to let Dave Randall be on this mission. And so, in order to appease his daughter, because he knows that she loves him, it's already too late. She's in love with him. He decides to have Dave Randall have a actual place of setting things up and being a key element, assessing people, bringing people in and showing them around, all kinds of stuff, and giving him the knowledge to be able to be vital to this operation. Now, does he have to be there? No, but I think he has to be there for Joyce, because she's in love with him and she knows, like, in another world, like, would their understanding, everybody's understanding, they're going to be going to another planet, and that is that planet Tyra that is passing the Earth. And so, yes, this is the plans here, and I thought this was really cool how they were able to do that as if it were real. Like, this is a production that really thought about many of the details to try to actually launch this thing. So there's mathematical equations, there's the ship there, and the ramp that they plan on making in order to get this sucker into outer space. Wonderful ideas that are being talked about here, and I do appreciate it so very much as a science fiction lover. Is the science correct? No, absolutely. Is that like is this possible? Maybe they were just creating things here. They were just imagining. And that's the part about science fiction that I love. It's science fiction. And so yeah, wonderful, wonderful creativity here. And here's another look at that board with plans on it. And there is Dave Randall pretty much telling everyone exactly what is to come, where they're going to be working on the project, and what is required of them, all that stuff that you would learn in orientation. So he's in charge of that, as well as some other things that are going on in the operation. So they gave him a good job. They gave him a chance to prove himself, and he did, like all the way through. He does not falter. He becomes our protagonist. And I love in the beginning how we learned about the end of the world through Dave Randall. We'll continuously learn more about this operation through him as well. And this is an epic picture of this ramp that they've created. How cool is that? It's a wonderful, and I believe, I'm not sure. This is a model here of a miniature set, and it looks fantastic. Fantastic. Here is the actual behind the scenes of what it was that they did, the scale of what they have here. I believe that's 125 scale, maybe even more. That might be even 150. It might be 150. I'm not sure, but it is tiny compared to how it would have looked in real life. It would be huge because we're talking about an ark that was to take many, many people, livestock, different animals and creatures, another world to start over, to start over. It's wonderful. This is one of the screenshots of, them building this thing. So it took a lot of manpower for people to get up every single day and work on this thing continuously up until the very last moments to do this. It's very intense, and you feel the time counting down to those last few days, to those last few hours. It was wonderfully done, wonderfully done. You feel the emergency and the urgency of the situation. There is a character by the name of Dr. George Fry that we see on the far right. And he is going to be important in the story. He doesn't say much in the film, and we don't really get to know him as a character. But and I'll fill in the information later, but there is a great scene about him that changes a lot of the characters. Wonderfully done. I think the writing here was just great. But he is Dr. Hedren's like right hand man. They do everything together. They're incredible together, and I did love the dynamic between the two. Okay, so we've got the first episode of Danger, where the planet Tyra comes very close to planet Earth, and in its wake, there are so many areas of destruction. So bad that it takes down like anything on ocean front areas are all taken out. It's really bad. Sends earthquakes and volcano eruptions all over the planet. So we've got a lot of problems at the base that this particular commune of people are gathered, that are building the ship. So they have to put out all these fires, and they have to continuously readjust everything that went bad during this time. Now, there are people all over the planet that are calling out for help, and they're to be very realistic, they're not going to be able to pick those people up and take them to the commune, because already the commune has way more people that can fit on that ark, which is really sort of a shock. It was sort of like another punch in the guts when we find out that there's a lot of people on the commune that won't get to go on the ark. Really breaks your heart. So here they are, like working and toiling really hard, and still they won't make it. Then there are people out there who are definitely doomed, but they hear these calls like, "We need medical supplies, we need help," and so we have Dr. Tony Drake and David Randall go out there to try to save these people. Now, these guys are again just at this point in the story, they're really upset at each other. They're really angry because it's clear that Joyce has picked Dave Randall and has pretty much dumped Tony, and he's not happy about it. But there's people's lives to save, or at least lives to try to make them feel some comfort before the end. So they go out, they deliver some medical packages to some people. Let's see if I have a slide. Oh yeah, this is one of the moments that were captured during the floods in New York City and other places where they were close to water, and they're witnessing all of the devastation and the destruction that happened. Very, very sad stuff here. But here they're dropping off packages to these people. These guys are doomed. They're not going to make it to the ark. They're not going to get help anywhere. It's really sad, but that's the last thing that they can do to offer to to mankind pretty much. But then they find this little boy who is on the roof of a building, and he's like pretty much tied to the chimney. Now, something interesting happens here, which I thought was really cool. Dave jumps out of the helicopter, and this is all live action, and it looks great. It looks great, but it looks so good. It looks like a great stunt. He jumps out of the helicopter and gets a little boy, puts him in the plane, and then the plane starts taking off. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." For a second there, I was like, "Oh my God, this is awful." I mean, it goes all the way around and it looks like it's about to take off. And I was like, well, maybe he'll come back for him. And it looks really bad. I almost died watching that moment. And then suddenly the helicopter starts turning back around and comes back for him. It was like, phew. Right, because if he would have left him on that roof, oh, it's like, oh, you know what? Poor old Dave Randall died on, trying to save that little boy, and no one would have known. No one would have known at all. It was very nice of him to come back for him, and it's really fun when Dave goes back into the helicopter. He said, "Oh, I was getting worried there that you weren't going to come back." And Tony says, "I thought about it," and they were both, they both started laughing, and it was really a nice, lighthearted moment for that scene to lift the mood. To know, like, this guy, Tony is a good guy. Tony is a good guy, and so is Dave Randall. And so this is great. They are now friends. They are now friends. They have gone through the worst that you can go through together, and now they're friends for life. It was great. I love that moment so much because just seeing the best in people really inspires me. It really does. It really inspires me. What an inspiring moment. Finally, I think Joyce thinks that, now for sure, Dave is going to go with them to the new world. But Dave is like, look, everybody has a purpose around here, but I don't. And I think it'll be better if somebody else goes. And it really breaks Joyce's heart there for a minute. She's completely devastated. That love isn't enough. Being as much as she's spent so much time with him, even love isn't enough to get him to go to the new world. Tony steps in, and he's really sweet. And remember the doctor I mentioned before, Dr. Fry? He's the one that's going to be piloting the ship. The thing that is really kind of surprising is Dr. Fry looks really young, but Tony says, "Oh yeah, he's got a heart condition, and I don't think he's going to make it." So finally, Dave Randall says, "Okay, I we can finally be together. I can finally go to the new world with you guys. And it was the one thing where he finally realized that, or felt like he was needed. He was truly needed, because if something happens to this guy, or something that happened to Fry, there was no one who was going to be able to pilot the ship. That is a key moment in the story where Dave can truly express his love to Joyce, and it's a wonderful moment. Now, the next thing that really is sort of the other storyline in here, which is really beautiful, but also scary, but well done. Sidney Stanton, the rich guy, one of the things that he does is that he brings on board a whole bunch of guns, just in case, and it was just in case people got a little bit unruly and wanted to force themselves on board the ship, and that would doom everybody. Nobody. So there had to be a certain number of people on board the ship, or else they wouldn't even be able to take off. It turns out that now everybody has to draw straws in order to, well, draw straws in certain terms, but they have to be picked from a lottery. And it's really, really sad to see some of these people not be able to make it. The guy who is pushing around Stanton is probably not going to make it onto the ship. And so, out of absolute, hysteria and just being crazy and wild, he takes up a gun and says, "Hey, look, I need to be on this ship." Stanton ends up killing him, and it's really a moment where people are finally realize, "Ooh, this could get really serious." A lot of people could start freaking out about getting on that ship. Yeah, we have got all these people, and most of them aren't going to make it onto the ship. So it's very, very disappointing that they couldn't fit everybody on the ship. It's there's moments of grief and sadness. They try to put a lot of that in the story, and I did appreciate that. I did really appreciate that. So up until the last minute, they're rushing and rushing to make sure that the ship built before Belarus comes through, and it's just barely down to seconds. At the end, they were wearing these really terrible looking suits, but that's supposed to help them with their flight and stuff like that. And yeah, there are the suits there. One of the tie-ins or the tie-ups is that at the end, this man, Stanton, is correct. People did start losing their minds. They found his guns that he brought, so it was sort of his own undoing that they found the guns he brought, and they started to go haywire and try to get on that ship. It was pure pandemonium, and it is definitely something I'm glad that they put on in there, because that would definitely happen. Very realistic events occurring here, definitely. And so this is everyone all strapped up and ready to go to outer space. And unfortunately, Dr. Hendren didn't make it to the ship because he saw all of these bad guys, or all of these attackers coming. He started the sequence of events that would actually send the ship off and running. So it was one of those moments where you're like, oh no, he built the ship to only just see it, operate without him. And of course, Stanton is there as well, and is just very disappointed that he's not going to be a part of a ship that he paid to be on. But the other piece is that the last moments he stands up from his wheelchair. I'm like, what? You could walk all this whole time? Oh my goodness. So yeah, that was really crazy. And the world is basically destroyed, and these, everybody's in space. What a great job they did on that rocket ship, and the whole ramp and everything. What a great job on those miniatures did they do. I enjoyed it so much, and all the hard work and dedication is right on screen. It looks fantastic. It looks fantastic, and there was some matte work that was done, some lots of paintings done, and very, very good stuff here. Good stuff for the time period. And they finally reached the new world, which is It's really so awesome that they found a world. There's snow on in this world. I always complain that many of the stories that we watch that are science fiction, they talk about other worlds, but we never actually get to see those other worlds. And here, there was an attempt to portray another world, and this is truly beautiful, a very unique look at a planetscape. So I thought that was unique and special for a movie like this in this time period, that they would have such a beautiful alienscape like this. Wonderful, wonderful work. And so the ending feels a bit cartoonish, but they are on a different planet. It just looks so beautiful and has, of course, a great ending, Hollywood ending, as they would call it. And they did end with a little biblical stuff here. It says the first day on the new world had begun. And now I know some people are afraid of biblical conversations or biblical inserts into their media, and I can understand that. I look at this and I just see how they were trying to tie in the two things together, and the two concepts of Noah's Ark and going to another planet and seeing a new world. These are classical stories and classical tales that definitely has, piques my interest. The Bible has many stories, and it just was really great to look at this and say, oh, how I see how they drew on the commonalities. Basically, this is what the story is. It is Noah's Ark, and what may happen if this actually happened in a real context of maybe the future or today, or the future where the earth was doomed and we needed to go to another planet for sustenance, for to continue our world. And that way is where I thought maybe Interstellar had a lot of comparative nuggety conversation, probably, that you would have with someone such as myself. Yes, this movie was wonderful. I couldn't sing its praises enough. It just blows my mind how I can watch a movie from 1951 and still enjoy it as if it was a brand new thing that just appeared, out of nowhere today. And it is in many ways a brand new thing. I've never seen it before. First time to watch this, but the concepts really still hold up. If you don't let any of your biases about, like, religious content in films bother you, and you're willing, open-minded to see a cool movie, this is definitely it. The characters are so rich and just wonderfully done. Good people doing the best that they can. You root for them all the way. And yes, oh, I'm so glad I was able to see this wonderful, wonderful movie. Thank you for all of those people who have told me over and over and over, you've got to see this movie. I am truly enriched by it, and I really appreciate all the suggestions that you guys give me. So thank you so much. And I guess this will be it. You guys, it was such a great time that I had today. And I'll see you in the next video.